Welcome to the Boomback Bros podcast. We're back with another episode talking about Vince Staples by Vince Staples, his newest album that just dropped a few weeks ago, and we're ready to get into it here.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. We have, who just graciously introduced us all, my brother ALEC. My name is Pat G at PatG563, and then we have Roger with us at RajDog_16. So I'm just super excited to talk about this album in general. Vince Staples is one of my favorite artists. I saw him way back in the day, the summertime '06 era, and it was a great concert, super small show, and I was like second or third row. I was just in, spitting distance. It was super cool to see him now that he's gone so far with his career. But Vince Staples by Vince Staples is being marketed as the third full-length album, but we're going to go ahead and talk about his past and how Vince Staples has come about as an artist. So hailing from Long Beach, California, he began his career collaborating with Odd Future members Earl Sweatshirt and Mike G, and this was in 2010. So Vince had not really decided to become someone involved with music, but was sort of dabbling with his friends at the time, other Los Angeles area guys that were creating music. And after Odd Future blew up in 2011 it was sort of a long road for Vince to also get signed and backing by a major label, but he was able to do so in just a couple years. In late 2013 and early 2014, he signed to Def Jam Records after being featured extensively on Earl Sweatshirt's album Doris. And after he signed to Def Jam, he released Hell Can Wait, and that was an EP with a ton of really great features on it. It's a pretty good listen through from 2014, so it's dated now, but his debut album wouldn't come out until the following year, summertime '06, and that was released to critical acclaim, and it was followed up by the Prima Donna EP and Big Fish Theory album each following year. And then Big Fish was actually critically acclaimed by fans and critics. I mean, it's a pretty different vibe from his debut, but people like to see the versatility in Vince. And that continued with his next album, FM, which was released at the end of 2018. And it introduced a new collaborator, which was Kenny Beats, who did a ton of the production on FM. And in 2019, he only released 3 singles, and they were coming out alongside the Vince Staples Show YouTube series. And I was really enjoying those and hoping that he would do a Vince Staples Show album, but now we're getting the self-titled Vince Staples album in 2021 after a relative silence in 2020. So yeah, what's your guys' background with Vince Staples? Have you been listening long? Which of these projects had you really tuned into before?
So for me, I remember my real introduction to Vince was those features on the Doris album. And the first project of his that I had listened to was, I remember I was the Portland airport, and I was listening to Summertime '06 when I was visiting my aunt. And I remember that was a really cool experience, just sitting there hanging out on my headphones listening to that. And over the years, that's really become a really important album to me and one of my favorites. I think it's one of the best double albums, especially, that's been dropped in the last couple decades. And Prima Donna I didn't listen to as much. Big Fish but I've gotten into Prima Donna more over the years. There's a lot of good tracks on there. And Big Fish I was also a really big fan of. He went into a lot more of an EDM direction in the production with that. And after that, FM coming out, that was really cool how he incorporated all the different radio interludes between there, and
specifically Big Boy's Neighborhood, an LA-based radio station.
Had the whole Power 106 thing with that album, so I thought that was really cool. And then I've been missing him a lot over the last few years because he only had FM, which is a half hour, and then the singles that were coming out over the last couple years, he had been pretty inactive other than that. So, and he's one of my favorite social media personalities, especially among rappers. So I've kept up with him. Always been a huge fan. I've been really waiting for some new music, and I've been really appreciative that we've got it back going on now.
Yeah, he's wilding on Twitter. If you ever read his stuff, it's insane. But I would definitely suggest the follow just because it is funny antics. But Roger, what's your background with Vince Staples?
So I started listening to Vince Staples probably at a time in my life where like I wasn't as invested in music as I am now. Like back then, I just threw stuff on a playlist. I added songs that I liked that I heard on the radio, and that was pretty much the extent of how it all went down for me. But my first introduction to Vince Staples was probably summertime '06. I remember adding this song, "Like It Is," to my playlist. That was like one that I really,
Hmm.
really listened to. I vibe with that one a lot.
I
And like
love
songs
that
like
song.
"Senorita" or "North North," songs like that. But honestly, I haven't explored a whole ton of his catalog. He's another one of those obscure artists to me. Like I just haven't taken the time to invest in his music. But I think I might have to. I really enjoyed his features on the Dreamville stuff. I've heard just singles here and there like Bag Bach and things like that. But yeah, I need to get more on the Vince train because you guys seem to really like him, and I mean you guys have good taste in music, so no doubt about that.
Well, we appreciate
Yeah,
that. I mean, I
appreciate it,
don't think
man.
you would think anything different if we were doing a podcast together, right?
Debatable.
Yeah, the
Can make for
interesting
good
arguments.
conversation.
Yeah, right.
Need a little contrarian energy every once in a while, you know. Can't
once we
always
get
be
once we
agreeing.
get guests, we'll definitely get some contrarians in
Mm.
here that don't agree with our takes, and I'll be excited but also terrified for that day to come. But Vince Staples was signed on Def Jam through the Artium imprint, which is actually no IDs. And I'm not exactly sure if Logic also had his music released under the same imprint, but you can see that Vince's projects from Hell Can Wait all the way up until FM were all released under Def Jam with the Artium imprint on there as well. And so the Vince Staples album, maybe that's why we had some relative silence from him over 2020, is on a new record label under Motown or Universal, who owns them, is doing the distributing. But this album was exclusively produced by Kenny Beats. And he's another social media personality, and he does a lot of Twitch live streams, like really putting people on into the music and explaining sort of the method to his madness a bit with production and things. And I thought that Kenny Beats overall in this project was a good addition because he let Vince sort of take the baton and be the lead in most tracks, where his production was definitely a really good addition, but it was sort of in the background from my listen throughs of this album. But really bass heavy music, not quite the West Coast hip hop that you're used to, and I think that alone should warrant a listen of the album. But how he went to roll it out was first releasing the single Law of Averages, and that came out alongside the video. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the visuals that Vince put together here. You can see just super quick cutting in before we get to the area that he lives in, Long Beach, Ramona Park. And in this song, he's talking about all the different avenues, and yeah, you average. So you can just see all the different, parts of life down there. I really think it's a good way to show off what people are doing, and there's tons of like visual motifs and
Mm.
stuff like you could just see there. Lots of interesting stuff in his videos that have been put out so far, but they're just sitting on the lawn not doing shit. Did you guys like this video? You check it out once it dropped before the album or afterwards?
Yeah, I was definitely a huge fan of this video. I thought and like I thought it was pretty like cheaply produced too. Like he had some drones and stuff flying around, but other than that, it looks like he just got a bunch of people he knew, and then like some of the effects with like the prosthetics and whatnot with like doing the weird faces. But other than that, I thought he did a lot with a little in this video, definitely.
Yeah, super creative shots. Like
Hmm.
what we just saw there, how it zoomed into the shirt.
Hmm. Yeah, it's got a few different like transitions like that throughout.
That's wild.
The drone were phenomenal, honestly. Like I just like the way this video is put together. But like I don't know, I always dig the aesthetics in videos like this where it's your boy, he's rolling deep, he's looking fly, like he's going hard, and then the song itself just fits the vibe. And so like I really dig the video. I thought it was dope. I don't listen to it every time I listen to the song, but every once in a while, I'll pull it up, or like when I go watch album reviews or song reviews and things like that. But you know, I'm about it.
What do we think the theme here is with their like pretty much jokerized faces, um, being forced to smile? What is that recurring theme in the video, and why did he choose to include it?
I feel like that could be touching back on kind of some earlier stuff that Vince did, like how the song that you mentioned, "Like It Is," uh, like that one, it talks a lot about how like seeing from behind the glass, like how a lot of the times people from marginalized communities are seen as kind of like just purely entertainers. They like exist for other people's entertainment, and that's like a huge thing that he's drawn on in the past. And so you're like, oh yeah, you're supposed to be smiling, supposed to be like counting up your racks, supposed to be all materialistic and everything, just for other people's entertainment, which is messed up. But like that's like a huge thing that he's drawn on before.
Remember that? Yeah, I'm gonna put you on a shirt if you fuck me out my racks. I love that bar, bro. I
Hmm.
think I definitely think that has a lot to do with the smiling faces and the people on the ground, like just the people who laughed at him and got in his way, or you know instilled doubt in his mind and things. And so now he's like, you know what, like I'm up here now, you're on the ground, like you're at rock bottom. I'm up here now, like I don't need any of what the energy that you're giving off. And so
Hmm.
like I dig that. It was a little scary though. Those faces
Yeah.
gave me some of those what's that show called, that Real Odd show, where just a bunch of wacky stuff going on, and that's just kind of the vibe that I got from
Oh,
that video, at
Black
least in
Mirror
certain
or
parts.
Oh,
Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, Black Mirror. Yep.
I feel you, Roger. I think the themes that you're talking about there like really go with what he was talking about on the album, with like how he's like looking at all the mistakes that like people around him made growing up and how he was able to like get past that.
Mm.
I think that definitely connects with there.
And how they're average, but he's beyond that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? But that was the first video released, and that was on June 17th, 2021. And we didn't know that there was going to be an album coming out until June 30th, when he was actually celebrating the 6th anniversary of his debut. He also announced that his next album, the self titled album, was dropping July 9th. So he put that Law of Averages video and song out and said, hey, here you go. And we didn't get another piece of the album until Are You With That dropped as a single on July 6th. So just 3 days before the album were to come out. Um, there was an accompanying video for that as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And I think what's interesting to mention here is it's in a aspect ratio that is not normal here. So let's go back here. You can see it's all blacked out, and then the song is intercutting with the cuts here, but
Oh yeah.
it's an interesting aspect ratio.
I hadn't even
Um,
noticed that on my first watch.
yeah, let's go to a shot that you can more see the borders
Mm.
there. But this song is him getting chased at night, and he is
Mhm.
also all the other people in the neighborhood as the camera's tuning in and looking around in this beginning shot. And so then it moves on to him following, and some money falling out of his pockets and things. And I thought this shot was super
Mm.
interesting, how it's the progression of time, but he's also progressing further and further into the ground, or into the grave per se, because of the years gone by and time passing. You can see its fall here now. This is probably my
Mhm.
favorite one out of all of them,
Yeah.
where he's like waist deep and just looking up to the sky, questioning sort of what's going on and purpose a little bit. And then here's the funeral where he's the same size as a headstone, and it's just him head and shoulders until we get him all the way in the ground. And yeah, that's to symbolize after he, like, here, let's just watch that again. So he's blowing this out and he's gone just like that. I think shots like that are definitely needing to be appreciated. And for this shot here, I kept waiting to see if the dog was going to piss on the grave or something.
Same. I was
That's
totally
where I
that.
thought it was going. But yeah, that's the Are You With That video. And I really enjoyed it too because Vince himself, you know, we said he's pretty wild online. He said on Twitter, he's like, yeah, we creating fine art. And sort of talking about the behind the scenes a little bit. And I really appreciated visuals like this because it brings out more in the track than just sort of what we saw with the Law of Averages video, how it was more traditional hip hop type video where you're in the cut with your posse and everything and you're hanging out and, you know, showing off your lifestyle and where you come from. This one had more of a concept to go along with the lyrics, but let's go ahead and jump into that because Are You With That is the first track on the album. Vince jumps in reflecting on his past, sort of setting the stage for where he's going to go with the album and sort of talking about over his lifetime what he's seen and what he's done and reflecting back into, okay, this is a self-titled album. I'm going to talk a bit more in vein with my debut or earlier projects where we were being introduced to Vince and his lifestyle and where he came from and his story. And I thought that the video really tied it together well and made for an all-around good track that was a great intro for the album. But what'd you guys think about it?
So the video first, before even getting to the track, I was a huge fan of that. I feel like Vince has always done a really good job at kind of threading the needle between like he's kind of like he's a really funny guy. Like he's got like a comedy lane while also having like kind of a nihilistic edge to it. I feel like he's done a really good job of always kind of mixing between just kind of the like dread in the background while like also being like funny. So I think he's like did a really good job with that in the video. And like I thought this was a really good follow-up single coming off of Law of Averages. And I thought it like hearing this one before the album coming out, I was like really impressed with this one coming out because with the first one, I really hadn't heard Vince on production like that before, and this one really continued with like it's definitely different than the beat from Law of Averages, but it feels like the same like through lines to it. It's got like the same kind of heavy drums and like a little minimalistic feel to it. And I thought the production I was really impressed with. Um, and yeah, Vince in here he's like reflecting on his childhood, and like talking about the people he grew up with and the choices they made, and yeah, like the consequences that they've suffered with like falling into the whole trap of like gang banging and everything, and how Vince has been able to like avoid that and get past that. And yeah, I thought, and especially in the album sequence, I thought it was a really cool transition from the end of this one into Law of Averages with how they did the beats on there. So I was really a fan of this track.
Um, I so like when I listen to music, especially like for the podcast when I'm trying to review stuff, tend to listen to it in the background a lot. If I'm going to listen to it multiple times because I just want to do it in a row. And like for some reason, this track specifically would never stand out to me. Like I'd sit there and maybe bop a little bit and like listen to the lyrics a bit, like to a lot of the other songs, but this one just like would always go over my head. So I always had to like specifically put time aside to sit and listen to this track and not focus on anything else. And so that was a turnoff for me about the track. But I was a big fan of the euphoric vibe that it kind of gave off, like between the production and the video. But you know, like you said, it was a pretty simple bit of production. The song was pretty simple. All the songs on here are short, so it was just another short song. But like, I mean, it wasn't my favorite, but it was decent. Like, it wasn't a bad track. Just like a lot of the other ones, like I didn't really have anything bad to say about it. But um, yeah, I mean, like, I mean, yeah, it's really all I have to say about that track, honestly. I know it sounds a little but
I mean, it's the intro, right? It was
Yeah.
the first track getting
yeah.
into the album where we were sort of welcomed into the world a little bit. And so let's check
Hmm.
out this line, couple of lines that we grabbed from the song. Whenever I miss those days, visit my crypts that lay under the ground, running around. We was them kids that played. So he's talking about going and visiting gravestones of his friends that he grew up with that were involved with gang violence and didn't make it out. They were, a casualty of the streets. And it's sad to see. And I'm glad that Vince is using his platform to say, yeah, whenever I miss the past and miss some of the wild stuff that I got into, I go and see what some of the products of those actions and that time was. I'm going to go visit those
Hmm.
people at the graveyard and pay my respects. So I thought there were some really cool, and maybe not cool is the right word, but some pretty thought provoking lines that you could delve into in this first track just to set the scene of the
Yeah, I
world he's
feel like
presenting.
yeah, he definitely set the stage for like a lot of the themes that he would use all the way through the album in this song. And um, I feel like Vince is one of the artists where I think there's a lot of artists that they'll talk about like their past of like growing up in marginalized situations and like having to go through struggles of like gang banging and drugs and all that, and like they'll like talk about it but they won't necessarily like talk down on it. And I feel like there's a lot of artists that kind of are critical of that whole setup but they didn't really go through it. I feel like Vince is at like a crossroads there are not a lot of artists are in, where like he really definitely like went through it. He was in all that and like he learned from it and uh like really has an interesting perspective looking back at it now.
So track number 2 is Law of Averages. So the first two singles were sort of flip-flopped with how they were released. He gave us track 2 and then he gave us track 1. And so Law of Averages was the single that dropped. We broke down the video and it's definitely the most commercial song on here, I feel like, other than maybe the one that has the feature on it later in the track list. And I thought it was super catchy, and the sample, especially with how they did the transition between the first track and the second track,
Hmm.
they're not the same type of sample, but Kenny sort of uses them in the background as a bit of a melodic device for Vince to expand upon. And I thought it was a pretty catchy song, and naming all the different avenues from where he's at, and then flipping that into averages and yeah, saying "ho you average," I thought was some funny wordplay on that track as well. So I like that as a single, and I'm definitely going to be listening to Law of Averages more.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. Especially how I was saying the as a lead single, I thought this was a great one to put out first and a really good introduction to like Kenny Beats' style on this album and what he did with the production. And I thought it's been interesting how Vince has gone through like different styles on every single project he's put out since he's gotten onto streaming and got signed. Like, and I feel like each one has kind of different vibe of kind of like weather and like being like outside or inside. Because I feel like Summertime '06, he kind of had through lines with all the beats on there and like the interludes, whereas like you feel like you're outside, it's like rainy, or like right after it's rained and it's like kind of like muggy out, kind of grayish, and like being out by the sea, you kind of like listening to the songs, you kind of feel the saltiness of the sea on there. And Prima Donna after that one, I feel like it definitely listening to that album or EP, you definitely feel like you're inside. You feel like you're in a dark room like by yourself. And then going from there to Big Fish Theory, like that kind of is a similar ish to Summertime '06, because that one is like a good rainy day album too. But that one's like a little more like a thunderstorm than like a calm like after the rain type thing. Then FM felt like you're just outside, you're at the beach hanging out during the summer. And then this one totally came back to totally different vibe here, which is unique from any of those three or four. And yeah, I think it's just really impressive how he's been able to go through all these different like twists and turns over the years.
Yeah, honestly, like I thought this track was a banger. Like I this one, like I heard it one time and it was already on my playlist. And like I know we have our rating system, and like there's like I would include a couple ratings for this song. Like I put it as recommend, I would put it as playlist worthy, and I'd put it as a no skip. Like I don't know, like it was so catchy to me. Like and just some of the stuff he said was tough. Honestly, I thought it was tough.
Yeah, let's
And
take a
so
look at that.
this is probably hell yeah. Let's check out the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Got a squabble, now he cashes clay, but I'm Hurricane Carter, you know I'm gonna catch a case. But Lil Wayne Carter, what I call my 38, kiss your baby in the face if you play where I stay. That's just bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hella bars, double entendres on there. Yeah, I was really impressed by like I feel like the first verse on here he talked a lot more. It was like a lot more personal, where he was talking with like the themes that he was talking with the first one, of like what he's been through and kind of where he's at. Like I feel like the first track was talking about how what he had been through, and this one kind of transitioned to where he's at now and kind of touched on the loneliness he'd been feeling, like now that he's been like the one that made it out of his community. And yeah, I thought like the first verse is really good at doing that, and then the second verse he came through just bars on bars on bars with what we just cut out there. And like the beat on here was I think it might be my favorite on the entire project, with the whole like insanity like little sample thing. I thought it was really impressive on the beat here.
Surprisingly, though, looking at it now, both verses in this song are pretty short. Like,
Hmm.
Vince's delivery, I feel across the album is pretty slow and steady, so it's a bit more stretched out on the runtime than you might expect. But the tracks are short in general, so I'm not too surprised to see that the verses are short and then the chorus refraining, uh, everything that we found so catchy about the track. But yeah, it's a quick listen and really enjoyable from our perspective. Next up, we have Sundown Town, track 3. And I would say this is one of my personal favorites from the album. A bit more insight from the single verse that he puts out on it, and the melodic sample really helps to fill the track's length, especially with the outro. But he's saying some real stuff on here. I'm gonna go ahead and just show you guys the genius, because the one verse is pretty short, but I thought that it was super raw and good to hear. And so he was saying, yeah, with where I'm from, because he has repeatedly said he still lives in Long Beach, but he's just not involved with, the nefarious crime lifestyle that a lot of people get caught up in. He's doing music, obviously. So he's saying, I can die tonight, so today I'm going to go get paid. I'm the violent type, so don't play unless you want your grave. We was in the hood, rent was late, ain't have Section 8. So they didn't have Section 8 housing to be able to depend on a little bit for some a government assisted program where they can get some rent that isn't absorbent or ridiculous. And then had a 38 in the 8th, moved on 68. So they had a gun with the drugs and they moved on to another street. But then they put us out. We was sleeping on my auntie couch. Then she put us out, stomach growling, stealing from the Ralphs just because they needed to eat. If I pull out, I'm gonna send to the clouds. So yeah, if he's leaving, then he's definitely gonna be getting into an interaction where he's got to use that 38, and then watching bullets bounce. Fell in love with guns. I love the sound, and I guess there is a little bit of a second verse on here. My bad for saying there was just one, but this is a shorter one. But I don't fear no man, only Allah got the upper hand. Lost too many friends to the down the streets. I can't pretend that I'll make amends. I know the blood can spill again. Hanging on the corner, same as hanging from a ceiling fan. When I see my fans, I'm too paranoid to shake their hands. Clutching on the blam, don't know if you foe or fam. I got a plan. I'm just out here thugging till the end. No, I'll never fold or bend. Yeah. So
Hmm. Yeah, I really like the second verse on here, especially that
yeah,
little part where it's like hanging from the corner, same as hanging from ceiling fan, all like that whole 2 bar there.
yeah.
That was some of my favorite bars on the whole thing because it really like encapsulates the main themes that have been going on through the first like 3 tracks here, whereas like where he's from, like what he's been coming from and where he's at now and how those two have kind of like interacted.
And the dichotomy from fell in love with guns, I love the sound,
Mhm.
to lost too many friends, to the down the streets, and that's all the gun violence. I can't pretend that I'll make amends. I know the blood gonna spill again. So he knows that he's gonna get caught up in this violence again, but he can't be outside getting in trouble because he knows that it'll just end up getting him killed. So he's gotta be careful even when he sees people that are showing him love, because he doesn't know if they can be someone that could take his life. That just paranoia that he can't shake from his youth and where he's grew up.
Mhm.
Question for you guys:
Mhm.
Are you guys familiar with what a sundown town is?
Yeah, isn't that? Oh, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm just gonna let you describe it because I have a general idea, but I don't want to misspeak here.
Well, I think specifically like what he's saying in the song is different from the original uh like textbook definition of it. Like it's the same but like not. Like essentially like what a sundown town was that like it was a place where black folks couldn't hang out after the sun went down when it was dark outside.
Right.
And like essentially that's what he's saying here, but I think here he's saying in terms of it being a rough neighborhood rather than it being because of like racism and stuff. But I mean he could mean both, but like I think in this instance that's what he means. But I was just curious if you guys knew what it meant. I was just because I think that's important to note if we're talking about this song and
Mhm.
then the theme of the album as a whole and who Vince Staples is. So like
Yeah. Yeah, I'd heard the term before, but I like it didn't connect with me when I like saw it on the track listing and like listened to the song.
Yeah, I think it's more
gotcha.
talking about, alluding to that, but talking about after the sun goes down, that's when the bullets are going to fly, and I got
Hmm.
to be safe and inside. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to, you know, keep away from it. Um, but I think this track in general just gives a really raw perspective of where he was at the time. And even now, he has this paranoia that lingers to this day that he's struggling with. So, in general, this is one of my favorite tracks just because of the lyrical content.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite ones as well.
Yeah, I don't think it would be quite in my. I think I've got like a definite like top 4 off this album, but this like I don't think there's a single song on here that I don't like. So, but there's like the 2 interludes and then 4. Yeah, like 4 that I'd have in my top 4, 4 other ones, and then the 2 interludes. I don't think there's a single one that I don't like.
All right. The next one is track 4, The Shining. And this is a pretty catchy bass heavy banger. Total different vibe. And I feel like the extended outro of track 3 really helped to get us ready for a bit of a different stance and a different, musical tune that we're getting thrown at us. And uh, I feel like when he says on this track, "Shine when I hit the scene," that's just so catchy to me. And I was reciting that a ton as I was listening to this track and even afterwards. But what do you guys think about The Shining?
Yeah, I thought this one was pretty chill. Like I think it was a little bit slower paced than the first 3 there, but I think it still like bangs pretty hard, and the hook is definitely super catchy. And and I thought it was interesting on here where it's got the ad libs on here where it's like talking about the different streets and that connects to like the later on when he like outlines all that on there. And like the main thing that I remember out of this track though is whenever it's got the hook going, it's like blow her with a beam. Reminds me of on Vince's Instagram story, he put there was like some guy who had like he had the blower with the beam in the car, and then Vince like captioned his video saying, "We out here living the raps in real life. Stream Vince Staples."
Yeah,
And so
promoting
like
it that way. Oh my gosh.
yeah, whenever I hear that song, I just think of the video, the dude with the laser sight going.
Good lord.
Honest, I I had to have missed the hook because you guys were talking about the hook, and like I recognize it now after you guys were just had a little quick snippet of it, but like for some reason I felt like it was lacking. Like I don't know, I must have missed it. I had to have missed that part about
It
it,
was a
but I
quick
do
track.
agree it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was quick, like a lot of the other tracks. I think this was one of the shorter ones, right? Aside from the interludes being short, like 1 minute long or whatever.
Yeah, let's look at the lyrics on this one. Yeah, so The Shining is a bit of a quick track, but he's got the first verse here where he gets into a pretty good pocket. I really liked that he was saying, I cannot be perturbed. I live out every word I put inside my verse. You know it. And then this is the chorus that we were talking about here. Blower with a beam, shine when I hit the scene. That's the most catchy part for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes in on the second verse. But what'd you guys think?
Yeah, I thought like the living out his raps line and the line in there where he's talking about don't make shit for the masses. I feel like those two are definitely really like poignant with what he does, because I feel like that's definitely how he approaches his music. He goes in with a different style each time he comes in, and I don't think he listens to what like all the like even what the fans are asking for. I think he's like, all right, I'm just gonna go in the kitchen, I'm gonna do like what is like the next evolution in my career. And I think that's the smart way to do it when artists do it that way, which is tough because there's a lot of pressure like that's going against like the whole traditional way of doing things, but I think it's how you get the best product.
That's some good insight. In the second verse, that was at the beginning where he says, "Don't make shit for the masses," but he's saying, "F a mansion, ask when I'm moving to Malibu or Calabasas. I can't never do it. I'm too active." And so he's talking about how he's active in his community in Long Beach and how he still resides there too. And then talking about a woman, she attractive, huh? But she plastic. I can't get with that shit. Like that's just talking about how a woman that he sees he can't be getting with her if she's fake, but Vince can, like you said earlier, Al, shine a little bit of light of comedy or lightheartedness where it's either tough subject matter talking about his community or X, Y, or Z. And yeah, I thought that this was a little bit of a slower vibe, but really bass heavy, and I felt like it was a good banger to put in track 4 here.
For sure. I like I said, like I don't think this one's quite in the top 4 either, but it's really hard to decide because all the songs on here I think have at least some appeal in one way or the other.
So next up is track 5, Taking Trips. And the first thing I thought of was his song with Kehlani, Trippin', off of the FM album, and how that was sort of in the same vein, but this is a totally different track name. But how he says trippin' repeatedly is that sort of same refrain that he gets into. But we have some funny bars to talk about on this track. Let's do this one. Quidditch, catching snitches. And then he's also saying, and funny enough, because the album dropped in July, I hate July. And then he says, sheesh. Crime is high, the summers suck. Can't even hit the beach without my heat. It's in my trunk. So he's got the burner on him.
In the swim trunks.
Yeah.
that cannot be comfortable.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I thought this one had a pretty catchy hook on this one with the whole tripping thing. And I thought his flow was pretty cool. And like it keeps on continuing the themes of like previously in the album with like especially with that one there, like keeps harking back on like the paranoia of like how like even when he's just out at the beach or whatever, he can't trust anyone. He's still got to have the heat on him. And it has like a little kid like audio sample like at the end, but I couldn't tell where that was from. It didn't seem familiar, but it
sounded
sounded
like a movie of some
yeah.
sort. So I'm sure it's an older movie. I wanted to think it was a Karate Kid because it sounded like the guy who plays Daniel LaRusso probably sounded in the 80s, but I'm not sure what movie it's exactly from here.
But yeah, it's like some little thing talking about like peer pressure and
Mm.
sounds like kind of like a say no to drugs type thing, but I couldn't tell what it was.
Like this one though. Like I like the production on this. This is another one where the
Hmm.
production stood out to me because I did like that sample. You know, that little, it was like a little baby interlude in there at the end. Like we're just that little bit of talking that. I mean, we obviously like all of us are like we're not quite sure what it was, but like it still added value to the track, which is what I really liked about it. But yeah, it was just another decent track for me. Like there's only a couple that really stood out to me, but, like, I would probably put it in the no skip category, you know, at least this album as a whole, but I really liked, the samples and, it was good for what it was. You know, it was short and sweet, just like everything. I'm gonna say that a lot because everything in this album was short and sweet. It was all short, and it was all just enough to get me by, and, like, I feel like if they had done a little bit too much on any of these, it wouldn't have maybe been as good other than maybe adding some more, uh, like, other artists,
Hmm.
features on this track. I think that would have been cool. I had some ideas about that, but, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's my take on it.
I mean, it's interesting that you're applauding the shorter tracks. I mean, they keep your attention for as long as the runtime is, and then
Hmm.
after that, it's on to the next track or, whatever else you got going in your playlist. But I feel like as a listen through, this album was really quick to just put on and have, a listen through of each track and get what you needed from it and sort of move on because as a runtime, this is only 22 minutes. So each track being in the 2 minute range or less has just been quick thoughts of Vince and sort of expressions that don't overstay their welcome at all. And that's cool that you appreciate that. I'm sort of mixed on that take because I also really like longer songs, and maybe some features on here could have done a lot for the runtime and just making sure that we got a little bit more on here, but it wouldn't be Vince Staples' self-titled album if it wasn't mostly just him on here. So that's probably a little bit of insight on why they chose to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I would have appreciated a few like longer tracks on here too. Like the one that like I think there's only one song that really has a prominent feature, which is coming up in a little bit here with "Take Me Home" with the girl on the hook. I would appreciated a little more songs that were like that, where he's got like someone coming in on the hook or just like one verse or something. But yeah, I feel like definitely in showcasing himself, I think he did a really good job on this album with just showing himself off, and that worked with like doing shorter tracks where he's not like overstaying his welcome, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So track 6 is The Apple in the Tree, and this is just an interlude. So there's 10 tracks on here, but track 6 and track 9 are both interludes. And so this one is specifically slowing things down and having Vince's mother come in and talk. So sort of in the same vein as how Tyler had his mother on an interlude on his album that we just reviewed. So check that review out if you haven't already for Call Me If You Get Lost. But Vince has his mother come on here and she's just acting wild. She's describing lying on the stand to defend Vince's father and also seeking out the person who Vince's father was convicted for attempting to murder. So the title alludes to how that same loyalty that Vince's mother has for her family and the people that she loves and cares for, Vince also has. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Even though it's titled "The Apple and the Tree," the saying goes, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." So he's sort of alluding that that same loyalty that his mother has, he has for the people around him in his circle. So what do you guys think about this? This was just sort of a
Mhm.
funny interlude before "Take Me Home" really came in.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool bringing in the guitar on here for the beat going into "Take Me Home." I loved that on there, and yeah, I thought it was cool with how he named the track "The Apple in the Tree," and with how you can really tell how he got his attitude and his loyalty with how he carries himself from his mom.
You guys were going to have that same that same idea about the title of the track and like how it relates to the, or should I say the interlude, and how it relates to, you know, what they were talking about, specifically in that short instance with his mom talking about, you know, the child, about his dad and Vince and who he was. But like, um, I didn't like, I thoroughly enjoy guitar and any music. Like it, I think that stuff always stands out to me just as someone who's been learning guitar recently. So like, I don't know. As I've gotten older and I've listened to more music, I appreciate guitar more, especially in music where you don't find guitars often. And like, you know, I'm just like I'm ready to hop into that next track too because I know there's guitar in there that I really liked as well. You know, it sounded very similar actually.
I'm
Now that I
sure it
think about it, but
was the same sample that they just slowed down, or maybe just had the whoever was, you know, playing guitar that day, just a different section of it, and then they actually had the repetitive part with the sample in the next track. But oh my gosh, check what Vince's mom was saying on here. We pulled, you know, I was singing in the choir with a gun in my purse, so don't go there with me. Because that's just a hilarious thing. Like she's just being super candid and revealing in this interlude, talking about where her loyalties lie and also how how she goes about, you know,
Mm.
different situations,
Yeah,
and
and
it's
that's
just
like
funny.
totally something Vince would say,
Yeah,
or in like she says it like totally the same way how he would be saying something like that.
yeah. He definitely got a lot of her humor, and it even goes more from, you know, the title of the track. It was just very aptly titled because you can just relate anything that she says that you see similarities in Vince right back in there. So yeah, I thought that was just a really fun interlude before we get into, I think this is one of, I'm speaking for the group here, hope this isn't out of turn, but one of our favorite tracks from the whole album, Take Me Home, featuring, I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce it, but Fouché or Fouché, and she does the chorus on this one. But yeah, this was probably the other most radio type song, and that guitar sample is just infectious to your ears. Like Kenny Beats really did his thing, putting this one together for Vince. And yeah, I really liked the singer on the chorus. She did a good job and contributed to the vibe. And yeah, this was just a good one that also had some bars included. But what do you guys think about this track, Take Me Home?
Yeah, I've been waiting to talk about this one. I think this is definitely my favorite track on the whole album. Like, I think the guitar, the beat is amazing. Like, just so catchy, just gets stuck in my head all the time. The hook, the Fouché does that ooh, and like all the like everything. It's just beautiful. And the first verse on here, Vince's bars on there, and what he's talking about, I think it might be my favorite verse on the entire like project. I feel like this everything just tied together perfectly on this song and was like the peak of the whole album. I just really loved this one.
Yeah, I agree. Like there was some really good storytelling. Like I agree about that first verse. Like it was spot on. You know, it fit the dynamic so well. And just like right back to the guitar. Like the guitar was so good. I'm a big fan of Kenny Beats production, so like I already knew the production on this album was gonna be good. So like I really don't have anything negative to say about any of the production on any of the tracks. But yeah, I think I think I'm gonna have this one on repeat, but I think this is the song I listened to that made me be like, "Well, I wish there was more features." Um, but like maybe this was just like all we needed. Like this was enough to feed our feature, you know, our feature fiend, you know, mentality at the moment. But like you said, like you know, it's a Vince Staples album titled Vince Staples, so like it makes sense that there's not a lot of features. But you know, Fouché did her thing, and maybe we'll see her on some future tracks with him and maybe other artists too. Like maybe this puts her in the limelight a little more for us.
Yeah, we'll have to look into her music more because I thought she did great on here. Like, let's just look into what was said. Um, this is that first verse that we're talking about, and Vince just comes in, I don't want to die, but I will for the cause. So that's just powerful statement in general. But then he says, swallowing my pride like them pills y'all be on. I hate when you hide, but you hate feeling lost. And I hate every time that you ask, can we talk? Yeah, yeah. The first verse here was just true poetry, I think. And he's talking about, you know, these trips come with baggage, been all across the atlas, but keep coming back to this place because they trapped us I preach what I practice. These streets all I know, and there's no place like home. No place like home. And then the chorus comes in, and she goes, "Ooh," you know, and take me home like I clicked my shoes. So that's a reference to um, the classic movie where Dorothy has her ruby red slippers, says, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home," alluding to, Vince saying the same thing here from Wizard of Oz. I had to think of it. And that was how she was able to transport back to Kansas. So um, she's talking about, "I'm up, the price is sky high. Please save your 2 cents. I'm fine. So I don't need your input or your 2 cents. And, don't give me that. I'm good how I am. I got no censor. I vibe like, ooh, only abide by my rules." So yeah, I think this is a really good track, talking and not too much about California per se, even though that's Vince's home. But he's talking about sort of the people dynamics more than like the physical locations in Los Angeles or anything,
For sure.
I really liked in the second verse. "Then it's out the way, out of state. Please don't tell him me. Don't need no more felonies. All these broken memories. I be solo dolo, never knowing who working with police. When I hit the set, it's loaded. I don't know who envy me. I'm the only one who made it out. You remember me? You made a friend, or you a friend of me. You plan on killing me, no?" And then the chorus comes in again, and then she's able to do the outro as well. But that same feeling of paranoia that's been persisting through the earlier tracks continues here in the second verse.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, definitely this song has tied together like all the themes that have been coming through so far, and adding the kind of like relationship bars that were in that first verse of saying like I hate when you ask can we talk, and like all the other things that he touched on there. I think, yeah, just really great bars on here, really great singing, really great beat. Like I was extremely impressed by this song.
Yeah, we'll definitely have that on repeat for the time being and going forward. I think that's one of the standouts from the whole album. But the next track is Lil Fade. And Vince is just, going off the same really good Kenny Beats production again, really bass heavy. And this is definitely a banger. And it starts right from the jump. He's saying, "Lil Fade, trip and get your whip sprayed." So if you're, messing up, you're actually going to get shot at when you're driving around town. So you got to be careful. Um, but what do you guys think about this track? This was just a banger for me, like super enjoyable to put on throughout the listen through.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. But I think I think I pinpointed it. Other than like the two interludes, which I don't think really count, I think this is my least favorite song on the whole project, but I still love it. So, and I thought it was kind of cool how on the little intro part and kind of how it fades out at the end, it's got this little like squealing noise, which reminded me specifically of the squealing noise that the Horcruxes made in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the movie.
Of course.
So yeah, I had that little connection there. I thought that was funny. But I thought yeah, this one, like I know a lot of the ones on here are shorter tracks, but I thought this one felt like the shortest, or if not like one of the shortest.
This one's right over 2 minutes. So.
Yeah, and I think the rapping is like maybe like a minute 45, something like that. But I thought this one was like lower on how I'd rank them, but I still had a great time listening to the song. It's a banger, and it's still got really cool production on here.
Honestly, I'm with Alec on this one. This is my least favorite track. I don't know if I would. I don't even know if I really like this track at all. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I thought it was kind of. I felt, I got the vibe down. It was a bit grimy in my opinion, like the way the production was. But I wasn't a big. Actually, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this one. This might have actually been the track that I lied earlier when I said that all the production was good on this. This is the one that I didn't like. But I think with what Alec was saying, this being his least favorite track, but like him still liking it speaks to the validity of the track and the artistic take on it, and how good it actually is as a whole. Because like I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me to look at a track individually and talk about how much I like it because I like to think of the project as a whole rather than just the track. And so, like, I can't say I hate it, but I can also say I hate it just because I thoroughly enjoy the entire album.
That's interesting that you guys feel like this is your least favorite. I think you had a good point, Raj, with saying that this was your least favorite beat, though. I would probably, I'm not sure if I would agree. I need to give this album a couple more spins before I can really tell, but it was pretty repetitive, and,
Man.
really high tempo too, high BPM. I mean, so I could understand where you're coming from there, but
Man,
I still thought it had some shining moments,
I don't know if I can give this too many more spins just in the immediate because I've just like listened to it to the point where it like is giving me a headache now because I've listened to it so many times. I love it, but it's just like I need a little break
Yeah,
now.
might need a little break for a couple weeks. But
Mm,
on the second verse here, I thought it was cool that he said, "Wall calls, homies on the 4 yard, running up the scorecard, death threats. I ain't lose a step yet. Still hanging like a Warhol, so hanging on
mhm.
on the wall like a Warhol painting or piece of art. Wartime. I was in the back seat. I was on the front lines. Smoke cuz he was popping hot shit. Now we on a pro club." So even though he's got a super short bars in this verse, he packs a lot into it,
Mhm.
and there's still good lyrical content, even if it's um, not our favorite track on here. And like the beat was super repetitive, and the chorus too. So he's like, so what's up with it? Tell me if it's up, and
Yeah, I'd
that's really
say
repetitive.
it's definitely my least favorite hook.
Hmm.
Yeah, like the beat, I wasn't as critical of the beat, but like, and the verse, I was still a huge fan of the verse on here. But yeah, the hook, not a huge fan of, and the beat, it was still pretty good, but like, there's a lot of better ones on here. But the verses was like still like at the level of the rest of the album.
Yeah, and then at the end here on the outro, he just shouts out all his friends and people that he knows that he's trying to get freed and back into society. And yeah, he's like, young Faye gonna be out by the time this drop.
Hmm.
And yeah, just sort of advocating for their freedom from uh, being in prison. So yeah, we only got a couple tracks left on the album. Next is number 9, which is Lakewood Mall. And so this is the second interlude of the album. And this time it's actually one of Vince's homies. It doesn't say exactly who it is, they're not credited anywhere that we could find, at least. And he's talking about some scrap that him and Vince were able to avoid. And they learned the lesson of staying away from crime lifestyle and just people that are getting into situations like that in general, because it's super easy to get caught up in that type of stuff there, even when you're not even going out of your way to find it. It's something that, going to a house party or anything else, it's really hard to avoid. And like, check this out. He's talking quick on here too. So this dude is telling a whole story. So
Mm.
I would recommend giving it a listen if you haven't, just because it's funny enough to sort of entertain you, but then it's also, once you look into what he's saying, a lesson about how they're getting out of a sticky situation that they could have got implicated in a murder or anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought there was a cool intro of the storytelling here, and I think it did serve a similar purpose of the other interlude. I think they both did a really good job of like setting the scene and like filling in with like about how Vince is and like his background and everything. I feel like they did a good job like connecting through the songs and continuing the vibe that's been set throughout the whole album.
Thought it was a nice little interlude. I don't really have a whole lot to say about interludes in songs. Like I mean, I know like their relevance and their importance to the project, but like it's not always. It doesn't have as much importance to me for every project I listen to. Right? Like some interludes are just a bit more meaningful than others, and they talk about different things, and maybe you relate differently to that or not at all. So like it's nice to throw some interludes in there, and so it was nice that it was in there. I'm glad he learned his lesson. Like you said, what he was saying was pretty insightful, and so yeah, it was just another short and sweet little bit interlude here. Lakewood Mall, number 9. Let's go.
Yeah, that leads us right into track number 10, the last track on the album. So super short joint, like 2 of them are interludes, so we really get 8 songs on here, and it's and that's spelled MHM, and it just, making the sound of a hum and a confirmative hum saying yes. And I think this song, from the track title to in the chorus, how he goes to sort of confirm some of the lines that he's saying, it makes it 100% certified banger. Like, this is one of my favorite tracks for sure, and just a funny idea that they were able to execute and make really good for this track. It's also pretty short. Like, I left it left me like wanting more for sure, especially being the last track on the album too. And I mean, the good thing about it being short though is you can just spin it through again from the beginning, and revisit all the different aspects and tracks that we have touched on so far and throughout our podcast. But what do you guys think about this very last track?
See, this is the last one with the 2 singles leading off and "Take Me Home" with here. This is the other one that was like my real like top 4 here of like songs that really stuck out to me and that I liked a lot. It was definitely a banger. Ended the album on a really high note. Uh, I thought the hook was super catchy, especially the line where it was like "Homies call me rich," cause that one keeps getting stuck in my head. And just the whole hook, everything is really fun listening to. Bangs in the whip. Uh, yeah, I think that was definitely a good one to end the album on. And I like the whole outro where he's like talking about all the street addresses and like pretty much outlining his hood and like really sticking his flag in Long Beach and like representing for where he's from, his people.
The production was on point on this song. Like it's definitely a banger. Like it makes me think of um like you guys are gonna hate me about talking about TikTok, but like there's this thing on TikTok where they're playing this song and like it was like they're in the car and actually no, sorry, it wasn't even in the car. There's this guy who does these videos where he has a camera set up where it kind of follows him around and does these crazy things, and he's always playing bangers like this, and he always just like bops real hard, puts his head on, he's just like looking all like like an NBA YoungBoy fan, that meme, like that's what that makes me think of. And so like I don't know, it's something that I would bang in the whip and just be cruising. Like it was one of the higher tempo songs for sure.
hmm
I probably put this one like Al has his top 4. It's not quite in my top 4, but it'd probably be like my number 5, maybe.
Yeah, here's that catchy chorus that we were just talking about. He's talking quick on the chorus, but he confirms the lines with chip cuz, tell him come and zip cuz, hundreds on his headstones, homie call me rich cuz. And yeah, so he just spitting and confirms it with and it's mixed really well to where that like encapsulates everything you're hearing once it gets there, and it's just super catchy. And yeah, I think that this one is one of my favorites for sure. And he ends it talking about take the 91 east, get off at Cherry, turn right, mm-hmm, get all of the way straight to south. Then when you get to south, make that left, and then it's all the hood right there. Go south. Matter of fact, go down south till you get to Park, Bellflower. That's still the hood. So he's outlining it with the streets, literally making a geography of where he's representing, where he's living, talking about the places that he grew up in and lived all these experiences that he's told you about throughout the album. And so, yeah, that was the very last track on Vince Staples' self-titled album, dropping in 2021. So, final thoughts. What do you guys like the best? What did you find that stood out the most? If you're listening this far through the podcast, we'd love to hear what you say on anything that we mentioned throughout the album. But Alec and Raj, what do you guys think? Did you enjoy this? Will you be revisiting it?
Gosh, I was really impressed by this album. I feel like it's definitely essential Vince. Uh, and I feel like the combination of his rapping style and Kenny Beats production, I didn't even know that Kenny Beats did a lot of the stuff on FM, but on here, I feel like their styles came through and really made a beautiful like connection on there, and it really made a vibe throughout the whole album. And it kind of reminded me the same way of how the Alchemist and Freddie Gibbs kind of did it on Alfredo. How like there's through lines between all the different beats and like on the album, but all of the different tracks have their own different flavor to them, even though they're all kind of like weaved together. And I don't know where I would necessarily rank this among like Vince projects, but there hasn't been a single one that I've disliked. And this one, it's just kind of harder to like place in there because it's so fresh and like it's shorter, and so there's just been a lot of replays of it that I've gone through. And yeah, I've just been really impressed by it. uh it was a really great combo between the guys. And yeah, definitely I've already recommended this album to other people, and I've been anticipating this the whole talking through of it, and kind of getting this out of my system because I've just been really enjoying this over the last few weeks. And I can't, and it definitely left me wanting more from Vince with how short it was. But luckily, apparently he's still coming up with another album that's supposed to be coming up in the next like year or two. So I'm really anticipating that now too.
I mean, we'll see because he's on a new record contract how frequent he's going to be putting stuff out. It, in the past had been yearly when he was first signed and everything. He had been putting a lot of stuff out, but he had slowed down in the past few years. So we'll see. I hadn't heard that rumor from before now, so I'm
Hmm.
looking forward to hearing more stuff. And I mean, my final thoughts are I definitely recommend this, and I think that you should check it out regardless of if you're a hip hop fan or into specifically West Coast hip hop or East Coast hip hop. I feel like those lines have been blurred quite a bit in the last decade or so. But Vince's take on how he's talking about his experiences through life and sort of telling his story in different ways in each project that he releases. So the self-titled Vince Staples album, I think, really encapsulates where he's at now and was a great point for new listeners to jump in. And so if you haven't heard Vince Staples before, go ahead and check this one out and then maybe go through his other projects afterwards, because you can sort of get a sense of who he is and learn more about his story through his previous work afterwards.
Hmm.
Like honestly, I think that like what Alec was saying, I think the whole point of the album this time around, it being so short and sweet, was that it was supposed to leave you wanting more. I think that's like really what he was trying to do with this project. And, I wish I had more of his discography under my belt to make better comparisons and like have a better idea of where this ranks in hip hop and just among his music itself. But like, I would recommend it too. I'm gonna go give it some more listens for sure. Once again, the production was phenomenal. I love Kenny Beats. And just like, Vince did his thing on this album. And, maybe I did have a couple things to say about the production on some of the tracks. And maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the tracks, but like that alone doesn't steer me away from wanting to recommend it to other people and listen to it again myself. Um, so like, there's a couple already on my playlist. After I go listen to it some more, I'll probably add more. And just like everybody was saying, I definitely recommend that you go check this album out. Vince Staples is the man. And, if you like Vince Staples, even though he's not necessarily a part of Dreamville, maybe he is, I don't know. But Revenge of the Dreamers 3 too, like he did his thing on that, even just like, yeah, like what, one or two songs or something like that he was featured on, but like still like it's another part of um his discography in a way because he featured on it. So yeah, you know, great album.
Yeah, you could definitely
Hmm.
say he's Dreamville adjacent because he's
Yeah.
signed to Blacksmith Recordings, which is the management company owned by Talib Kweli and some other notable
Hmm.
figures.
Mhm.
But I think that relationship makes him even more interesting as an artist. And I was hoping that he would, take some of those relationships and put them into features. But maybe if he has another project coming up, we'll see them there instead of the self-titled release that we just totally broke down every
Hmm.
single moment of. So I don't think there's another word that could even be said
Yeah.
about this album from us. But we would love to hear what you
Yeah.
have to say. Definitely reply in a comment, hit us up on social media. All our social media
Mhm.
ats are available here and in the description of the podcast. So thank you, everybody that listened through. We have been the Boom Bap Bros, and this has been our Vince Staples album review. So definitely check out the album and let us know what you thought, and we'll catch you next time. Pop Smoke is coming up next, so we'll be reviewing his newest album, and then we got a couple more in the pipeline, so stay tuned for our upcoming podcast, everybody.